Hello, I'm Coco, and around these parts we talk about how to dismantle systems of supremacy and exploitation from the inside out. Woo! Yeah, so I firmly believe that before we can dismantle these gnarly systems externally, out in the streets, we need to dig out how we've been conditioned by their core beliefs, culture, and social expectations on our insides and uproot it. Yeah, cool. It's a journey. So I'm super glad to embark with you all. This series is focusing on patriarchy because patriarchy is the keystone inequality that all systems of exploitation and supremacy build upon. Yeah, it's gnarly. It's the gnarly root, right? So all systems of exploitation and supremacy, economic, racial, religious, yada, 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 they are all built upon patriarchal indoctrination, right? And they require the core beliefs that patriarchy instills within us and the social dynamics produced by patriarchy to maintain a stranglehold as the socially legitimate way that we have to organize life, right? Because all of these systems are created, right? They're not divine mandates. They're human creations, all right? So, what's a core belief, Coco? I'm so glad you asked. Core beliefs are the unspoken logic of expectation built within us, right? From early experiences and exposure to normalized dynamics in our family, in our communities, our religious communities, our cultural traditions, right? So they form the core beliefs. And I think it's helpful to think of core beliefs as like the foundational programming running beneath your thoughts. So they're not the thoughts you're thinking. They're the core programming, the thought beneath the thought, right? It's all very subconscious, but we can make it conscious. We absolutely can. So I think one way, a great indicator of what a core belief is, if you're trying to look at your own, is like what gives you the ick. Not all icks are indicative of core beliefs. Some are just intuition or preference. But when you get like a real ick and you're like, I don't know why, that could be an indicator of a real core belief. And some of our core beliefs can be at odds with the conscious thoughts that we're thinking. So like an example would be, when people don't like, Hillary Clinton got this law, Kamala Harris gets it. When powerful women, right, are meeting men on stage and speaking directly, advocating for their policy and viewpoints, and being that presence, that powerful presence. A lot of people, women included, even some that really identify as feminists, would be like, I just don't like her. I can't put my finger on it. I can't put my finger. That could be indicative of a core belief of women should not speak so directly to men, or women shouldn't be holding power the same way, like, power is for white males or whatever. So you can be consciously like having these you're like consciously, I believe women are equal to men. But then there's this core belief running where it's like, ooh, I get the ick at how she doesn't qualify her words when she doesn't soften her speech when speaking directly to a male opponent. There's something icky about it. That could be a core belief. Cool. We love it. And core beliefs aren't permanent, right? It just takes conscious effort to kind of dig them up and reorient the ship, but it's all possible. So let's take a look at how patriarchy conditions us into this core belief that the highest standard of masculinity is narcissism. Yeah. And that the highest standard of gender relations, romantic or otherwise, but centers men and requires women to perform an inferior role. a submissive role. And that's the dynamic of narcissistic codependence, right? Centering men as innately superior and requiring women to perform inferiority, to perform that fantasy of centered innate superiority back to him to receive. That's a codependent narcissistic dynamic. And patriarchy says that's the highest form of gender relations. So, icky. All right. So this dynamic centers men as innately superior, right? Without obligations or responsibility to demonstrate, meeting a threshold level of conduct, achievement, maturity, merit, right? And then it forces women into performing inferiority, right? And often, and that we call that submissive, right? You submit to your husband by being inferior and meeting his needs, right? It's not great. For the trad wives. So another aspect of performing inferiority and centering the supposed innate superiority of masculinity is that it makes women available in that inferior submissive role to be scapegoated, right? So the man's fantasies of innate unearned superiority can always be protected when failings or inadequacies come up, or consequences for actions that he took or did not take, right? You can always project that onto the scapegoated woman, right? In the Christian household, the conservative Christian household, the man steps out. Well, was she running a proper house? Was she seducing him? Was she meeting his needs? Blah, 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 blah. The focus is on what was inadequate about her? Not, oh, this man had agency and stepped out of his vows, right? So it's fun. You get to be inferior and held responsible for all failings and inadequacies of the innately superior. Yeah, that's codependent narcissism. Cool. So yeah, patriarchal masculinity is narcissism, right? Plain and simple. Because all orientations of supremacy are fundamentally narcissistic orientations, right? And narcissism is a codependent worldview. It's not based on, that feeling of innate superiority. It's not based on the cultivation of self, right? It's not based on achievement and what you develop within yourself and externally. It's I am innately superior. Excuse me. And so if you're innately superior, you require the othered to be inferior, and you need to diminish them and exploit them to extract your feelings of superiority, because you require their performance and your perception of their inferiority played out to maintain your fantasy of innate uncultivated superiority. And that's a weak place to be, baby. Weak. Cultivate thyself. So yeah, let's get into it. In this video, we're going to talk about what patriarchy says masculinity is, and then define narcissism. And you tell me in the comments if you see any similarities. And before we go any further, I do not hate men. I love men, and thus I am advocating for healthy standards of masculinity, because I believe a healthy standard of masculinity is leading through contribution, right? Leading through contribution. And it has nothing to do with anyone being superior or inferior. But we'll get into that later. I just think this is a very, very impoverished view of masculinity, and I think its ideals hurt men and women alike. So let's get them out. Cool. Like and subscribe here if you want to stay in the loop. I got a bunch of videos that I'm working through. All of these ideas are already up on my Substack, powerculturecoco.substack.com, all free. But the content's a little more ahead there. I'm coming to YouTube to bring it to use. So if you like watching me talk about it, perfect. Like and subscribe here. If you would like to read, go to powerculturecoco.substack.com. Cool. All right. So, patriarchy patriarchy says that masculinity is defined exclusively by not being feminine, right? Don't be a pussy. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't engage with your interior self. Don't express yourself creatively. Nope, that's lady stuff. That's lady stuff. Don't wear that bright outfit. You're a man. You need to always look like you could go hang out in a crawl space, because that's masculine. No femininity. Don't be a chick. Don't be a chick. Don't be a girl. Don't have feelings. It's largely defined by what it is not, right? And the implication of defining it by what it is not is it's so superior and like just so innately superior. We don't even have to describe it, but it's definitely not this inferior thing, right? Once again, a very codependent kind of definition, because it's not focused on self and cultivation. It's focused on I'm not that inferior thing. So, patriarchal masculinity. It's all about being tough, unloving, unaffectionate, and stoic in a way that denies the existence of your interior self, right? Your feelings, your interior self. And that's a perversion of stoicism, right? Marcus Aurelius cried. We have a bunch of historical records about Marcus Aurelius crying. Seneca, he was like super into his feelings. And like, that's, go Google stoicism. Denying the interior self is not stoicism. Cool. All right. So patriarchal masculinity, the highest value for men is conformity with other men, especially through shallow expressions of connection, right? So I don't know if you've heard the idea that men socialize shoulder to shoulder and women socialize face to face. And this is important, right? So like the shoulder to shoulder relationships between men, it's about engaging in the same activity, kind of bullshitting about the same external stuff. So whether you're fishing or watching sports or whatever, the gaming, whatever it is, it's the external focus, right? And just kind of like killing time together. And part of the goal is to keep conversation superficial, right? Because you're focused on this thing. And if you bring up your interior self and your feelings, like what you're really going through, you really do risk being mocked as you're a chick and being like rejected for trying to share vulnerability. Or worse, do not share any vulnerabilities or like inside parts that are actually tender, because it can be weaponized against you at some point. Right? And if you feel that way about the people you're spending time with, like intimately, that's not a meaningful relationship. That's just killing time together or like seeking to use each other for other transactional benefits, right? I want you to help me in my career, so shoulder to shoulder, stuff like that. It keeps it all superficial and not meaningful relationships. So then women socialize face to face, right? It's like we talk about our stuff, right? Where it's like internal world and whatnot. And then in addition, we share, passions on the outside. I love watching this fashion stuff. I love whatever the shared hobby is. Women do both, right? But because there's that face-to-face element where we can really talk, right? And help each other process and not function from a baseline of fear for exposing the interior self. And that doesn't mean like all women are like buddy-buddy, blah, blah, blah. But it does mean that women have more meaningful relationships, more intimate relationships with some other women, like casual relationships with others. But this is important because meaningful relationships are the #1 indicator of a quality of life. There have been a ton of studies. There was one Harvard study that was done over like 80 years. So like a long time, like people's whole lives. And it very clearly demonstrated that a high quality of life is 100% predicated on the quality of your relationships. Are they intimate? Do you have someone to turn to when like you feel broken or you're experiencing grief? And you can really open up and share that self, right? No amount of wealth or career accolades or power or status can meet that foundational human need for meaningful connection. It doesn't mean everyone in your sphere is a meaningful, deep relationship, but it does mean that a few people are, right? That's the quality of life. And you absolutely cannot develop meaningful relationships like this without exposing your interior self. It's not possible. And not having the ability to reciprocate when somebody else exposes that interior self, to receive them tenderly, right? And not try and prescribe solutions, but hold them as they talk about it, right? And I don't mean you can physically hold them, that's nice. But some people don't like touch like that. I just mean hold space where they can be vulnerable and talk it out, and you can be a supportive presence in recognizing the validity of what they're going through. Because that's so much more powerful than trying to fix it for somebody else. Cool. So patriarchy says that being a man is rejecting femininity in all ways, right? Within and without. So that is a part of the reason why men have a lot of trouble cultivating any meaningful relationships with each other, and that's a problem. So the deal is, I know that was a bit of a tangent, it'll make sense though. So patriarchy says being a man is rejecting all femininity inside of yourself and out in the world, right? You don't perform femininity, I'm just so masculine, I hang out in the crawl space. But the problem is, every single human being, regardless of sex or gender, is a constellation of masculine and feminine coded attributes, right? Every single human being. The he's, the she's, the they's, the gays, every single one. So, what is masculine, right? We attribute to masculinity, right, the initiative to take action, the linear logic required to organize tasks and execute them in order to reach a goal. That type of linear logic and thinking, and the ability to execute that linear logic. Also, all actions and choices related to protecting oneself or others, and all actions and choices related to acquiring material resources for oneself or others, okay? So those are masculine attributes. These are the realms of executing choices in the material world, right? Which every single person must do, right? Every single person must learn how to master these attributes of self. So what's feminine? We attribute all realms of the interior self to femininity, right? So emotionality, self-understanding, right? Empathy for oneself and others, compassion, all nurturing capacities, right? Creative expression, largely feminine, and abstract thoughts, like abstract thinking. And so that's the polar opposite side to linear thinking, where it's A to B to C to D. And then you can deduce backwards. If you start at D, you can deduce D to C to B to A, right? That's linear. But the lateral kind of abstract thoughts that are not linear, like the womb of the mind where breakthroughs happen or ideas are born, like that spark, that eureka, that's coming from the feminine abstract part of your mind, right? So it's more through lateral associations, and kind of the logic of dreams is the feminine abstract. So when you're kind of lost in thought and you think about this one thing and it kind of vaguely reminds you of this other different thing, and then another different thing, and then while you're just kind of mulling it, suddenly you have the breakthrough and you suddenly understand exactly what you need to do to solve this one problem that's totally unrelated to these random thoughts you were having. That's the kind of abstract feminine thinking, right? So once again, these are all parts of being human, right? The duality of our minds, of our hearts, of our ability to execute choices in the material world that are born from the abstract ideals within, right? So they're all basic life skills and requirements of self-knowledge that all people must cultivate to build an authentic life, right? And genuine, meaningful connections. And so I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there are not differences between men and women. And I don't think that's problematic, right? It is truly not. But I am saying that all people must balance, learn their own unique set of masculine and feminine qualities, and find a balance to these qualities to be able to build an enjoyable life that is based in a self-driven sense of purpose, right? If you can't deal with your own interior world and like meaningfully engage with feelings and abstract thoughts and whatnot, you cannot be driving the boat, right? Driving the bus with a self-driven sense of purpose, because it's all reactive to the external world then, right? So it's about finding the right individual balance for our own selves, right? And that's what allows us to live from a place of empowerment, individuality, and wholeness. So, patriarchy denies men the dignity and confidence to face their interior selves, to compassionately see what's going on there, to express it, to dive into the fears and pains from childhood, the unprocessed emotion and wounding there, right? And process it, to engage with the desires of passion and creativity that may very well fall out of the very narrow definition of manliness. If you can't build it in a crawl space, it's too feminine. Yeah, ugh, I don't like crawl spaces. Anyway, this prevents men by denying the interior self, by denying access, by saying that's feminine, don't engage with it. It denies men the ability to establish self-knowledge, self-trust, and self-esteem. And these are very critical aspects for any healthy individual, right? So then for men have to then codependently rely on harvesting emotional regulation and a sense of worth from feeling superior to women, to exerting their feelings of superiority and making women perform back the inferiority or the submission to just shore up that sense of superiority. So ultimately it teaches men, don't build self-esteem because you're gonna have to go within and deal with your own stuff. Don't do that. Rely on the innate superiority of who you are, the uncultivated innateness of it. And that's a problem. That's a problem because it's a fantasy. And like men are really conditioned to believe that seeking this feeling, seeking to make others play out this fantasy is like actually a logical expression of that innate superiority, when really it's an expression of deep emotional insecurity and a fearful denial of self, masquerading as projections of strength. Cool. What's narcissism? Cool, let's talk about it. So here I'm about to list off some traits that are associated with narcissistic personality disorder. And so I'm not saying all men have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm saying that they have been taught that masculinity is a narcissistic orientation that embodies these anti-cooperative, anti-social dispositions as virtue. Cool. Narcissists have an unreasonably high sense of self-importance and require constant, excessive attention and admiration. They feel that they deserve privileges and special treatment. They expect to be recognized as superior without any achievements. They make their achievements and talents seem bigger than they are. They're preoccupied with their fantasies. Fantasies of their innate superiority, fantasies of their success, fantasies of their own power and brilliance. They fundamentally believe they are superior to others. And they are critical and look down on people who they feel are not important and inferior. They expect special favors and they expect other people to do what they say without question. They take advantage of others to get what they want. They have a fundamental orientation of exploitation towards others, not cooperation, exploitation. They have an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. They are envious of others and believe that others envy them. They behave in arrogant ways, brag a lot, and come across as conceited. They insist upon having the best of everything, however unearned. So here's the deal with narcissists. They can perform charm, they can perform empathy, like they can perform these warmness, but it's not about like mutual bonding there. It's about maintaining access to manipulate and exploit and harvest, right? So they can wear these masks and do the right dances. But it's all a mask and it's shallow, and that mask will fall at a certain point. Because fundamentally, they can't deal with their own emotions. They can't deal with their own interior world. So there is no boundary for a narcissist between their interior world and the external, right? They don't perceive other people as whole human beings who have, complex and rich realities, just like the narcissist. It's all flattened into, can I use this person to my benefit, or is this person a threat to me, right? And so when I say threat to me, what they're really doing is scanning. Is this person someone who will challenge me? Who will challenge my fantasy of superiority? Will they not submit and play out this fantasy back to me? Because if they won't, if just by virtue of their existence, they are uninterested in diminishing themselves or serving my needs, they're going to challenge me, they gotta go. That is a threat, they have to go. So then at that point, it's about causing social harm to that person to extinguish the threat, overtly or covertly, right? Whether that's, spreading a lot of weird lies about that person to try and make the social group in whatever situation turn their backs to them because they don't want the threat of that person exposing their fantasies of superiority, exposing their masks. And that person may not even be trying, right? They could just feel threatened by virtue of who that person is. They can't handle the comparison of, oh, that person's the real deal. They've cultivated these skills. They gotta go. They gotta go. Because I'm innately superior. I don't have to cultivate shit. They're not playing into my face. They gotta go. It's a problem. It's a problem. So narcissists require attention from others to regulate their emotions, right? No boundaries between self and the world. It's all projected outwards. And this is from a deep, deep insecurity. You can't deal with your internal self. Like, there's no self-worth there. It's all self-esteem and self-worth have been replaced by feelings and fantasies of superiority. And so one way they'll self-regulate when they feel discomfort or anxiety within is by seeking to exert control onto another, right? To manipulate, coerce, whatever, get somebody to submit and comply, to modify their behaviors to self-soothe them. So like an example of this would be like, if a man sees his girlfriend, right, he goes to a work function with her and he sees that she has a great and somewhat playful relationship with a male colleague. It's charming, they're performing their little thing, clients love it. Nothing's going on there, but they just work well together, right? He feels insecure. So instead of going within to deal with why do I feel so threatened and insecure, I have no reason to believe that anything's going on there. No, what he does instead is seek to enforce control on her. You can no longer go to networking events. If it's not at your office, you can't be there. You need to give up those professional opportunities, right? And exert that control to self-soothe his anxiety. That's a narcissistic orientation, right? So the worst thing a narcissist can experience is the indifference of others. Like I said, they rely on the fuel of attention from others. So admiration, ideal. Submission to their fantasies and whatnot, ideal. But if they can't have that, narcissists would prefer to be hated and see how much despair and destruction they cause in another person's life. because that's also a reflection of their power and their superiority, their ability to exert harm on the other. Oh, she's so obsessed with me. I did all this gnarly stuff to her. She must be fuming, blah, blah. They need that. They need that. They need that, right? Because like, if you're coming from a place of like fantasy, like that's so hard and there's no boundaries between internal, external, when there's nobody else and like people all abandon you because you've done mean stuff or whatever, when the supply of energy from others and attention, positive or negative, dries up, narcissists fall into total emotional collapse. That can look like despondency, like not getting out of bed, and like intense depression, or it could be like violent outlash, like violently seeking to reassert their superiority and control in another's life. It's not good. You get to a very crazy, non-functional place. Because without that attention, are they even real, right? Because the fantasy can't play out unless you force other people or manipulate other people into playing it back to you. So if they're all gone, the fantasy dies. And there's nothing but the fantasy. So it's a problem. So that's why, you know, if you've ever heard the term gray rocking, where women who are in abusive relationships with narcissistic men, the best idea is to gray rock, be as uninteresting as possible. And when they come to try and manufacture like distress and drama and whatever, you're just like unfazed. You're just like, okay. And just like try and be as uninteresting as possible and like just gray rock. Because without that hit of positive or negative attention, the indifference is what harms narcissistic orientations. And hopefully they'll disengage and go seek to find a new victim. Excuse me. So narcissists need to be centered constantly. They need to receive attention, right? And so we see this play out in the patriarchal dynamics right now. Like a lot of men are freaking out as women are withdrawing their attention and energy from relationships with narcissistic men, right? And like an expression of narcissism in a marriage is like men who refuse to participate in their own households, right? So they go to work full time, they come home, they want to play video games, they want to do football, like whatever. They don't want to participate in the interior life of the family because that's feminine. Once again, all interior is feminine. So then women are also working full time in a lot of situations and just utterly exhausted being like a single parent essentially in a marriage with this man. And he refuses, he feels like he should come home and receive all of the interior needs to be met, right? Vacuuming, planning healthy meals, getting the groceries, cooking the healthy meals, ensuring the kids, like yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of labor there. And it's labor of love, right? But you need a partnership there. And they don't have a cooperative attitude about anything regarding the interior lives, the interior life of the household, the interior life of their own self. They demand to receive it, to harvest that labor. Because from that fantasy of superiority, well, I am so superior, my time can only be spent on pay, play, or pleasure. Vacuuming doesn't pay, praise me, or pleasure me. Yeah, sure, it's necessary, but that's your work. That's your work. You do the work that does not receive pay, praise, or pleasure. I receive that from you, right? So it's a very hostile, anti-cooperative idea of family that you just come home and receive it and also dominate it. All of your choices go for everything you're not actually participating in. And then you'll be very critical of the woman and nag her for doing all this labor, but not quite good enough for you because she's inferior and you need to make her know that. And that's how you harvest even more superiority from her. So as women are like being like, F this, F this, F this, F this, F this. It is actually so much better to be an actual single mother, or it's so much better to live an independent single life, an economically free life, right? I'll work and take care of myself because she has meaningful relationships with her girlfriends, with her family, but she has these meaningful relationships. Men are struggling. Men are really viciously reacting to this. And instead of going within, too many men are just going down the same rabbit hole of alpha bro, like patriarchal nonsense and be like, gender essentialism, blah, 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 blah. No, it's all the like narcissistic spinning out. Instead of confronting their own deficits where, oh, I actually don't have these life skills of emotional intelligence. I don't have these life skills where I can manage my time and proactively contribute to my household. I don't have these life skills. It doesn't mean you can't build them, but the first step is recognize where you need to focus your energy and attention. But they're refusing because they're clinging to these fantasies of innate superiority, right? And it's a problem. It's a problem. And that's why men often treat women like garbage because they see her as innately inferior. And so, like, why would you be responsible to upholding standards of care, participation, and support to someone that's innately inferior? It's like saying you're gonna go give your horse therapy. It's innately inferior. Why would I do that? Why would I waste my time, right? So it's really poisonous mentality. Patriarchal masculinity is poisonous. And so ultimately this fantasy of superiority is the corrupt heart of our world. And we see this dynamic play out in all sorts of, other realms, but patriarchy is the core of it. And it's why these narcissistic men who just straight up refuse to do the work to grow the fuck up, right? Because that's essentially it. Cling to the boyish fantasies instead of facing reality and growing the fuck up. Doing the work to grow the fuck up. Right? Because if you grow the fuck up and actually gain these skills, well, then you're naturally going to attract partners because you'll actually be naturally valuable. You will have an array of skill sets that you can provide that are valuable to a partner and that you can work in cooperation to build a life together. But that's not the patriarchal mindset. It is you build, the woman, the inferior woman is responsible. She needs to be shackled at home to build life for me, so that I can just go focus out on being in this society, all external, focus on pay, praise, and pleasure. And when anything happens on the outside world that makes me feel a little insecure, I can come home and take it all out on you. And you'll just have to take it, because where are you gonna go if I take away your economic independence? Where are you gonna go, right? So it's gnarly. And it's why these men, they're saying that they're so masculine and so strong and virile, but then they're crying to daddy government. Daddy government, I need you to take away women's rights. No abortion, take away no fault divorce. I don't want them voting. Daddy government, you need to violently intervene. I am so superior and she's not playing her role as inferior. She's challenging me. Daddy government, we need to put her back at home. Make it so she has to rely on me and I am unaccountable. Make it so she has to perform inferiority back to me under threat of violence or my ability to withhold resources because she can't get her own. No. Daddy government, come set this right. Daddy government, she's violating my fantasies. Daddy government, harm her until she comes back. That's patriarchal masculinity. And it's a problem. All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up right there. So more videos coming very soon. Once again, all of these ideas and more are over at powerculturecoco.substack.com. You can find me on TikTok at Coco Has Ideas. And I'm so grateful you're here. Like and subscribe if this messaging resonated with you. I have a lot of fun stuff for us to talk about. Love you, sweet baby angels. Let me know in the comments what you think.